Welcome back to Living Resonance. I'm Munifa, and today we're exploring the cosmic current of the gene keys and the lunar cycles so you can cultivate your voice, live your genius, and weave your legacy in harmony with the current frequencies. So today we are talking about lunar phase of the full moon in Scorpio for May 1st on this Pacific end of the United States of America. And we are on Gene Key 44, which is also Human Design Gate 44. So here we go. We are talking about experiencing the themes of interference, teamwork, and synarchy. This is the genius of interruption, the reset. So that's what I'm thinking of it as. It's the reset. I think that's what I'm going with because we this time, we've had a lot of agreements between Karen Curry Parker and Richard Ride and this series this year, but in the last two, not as much, not as much. And so we're gonna see how they give us a I think of it as a more rounded view of the frequency because these are ideas. This is how the energy itself is being translated. So it depends on the perspective of the person, what they know, what they have experienced, and what they have downloaded from that frequency. So everybody has their own viewpoint, and I'll give you a little taste of mine along with everything. So we have 44.4 as Truth from Karen Curry Parker, which, yeah, I know. I see where she's going. And mostly I quoted her because the takeaways you're gonna see we're gonna go somewhere else with the gene keys. So the quote here is it helps us to discern the truth, not just our personal truth, but a truth that was rooted in value, integrity, and self-worth. Um, and I think this is again these things that are long standing. I find this interesting also that this is coming out of a week that we have moved, Uranus at least has moved from our perspective from Taurus to Gemini. And it being in Taurus has caused a lot of disruption of what we previously thought created sustainable or long-term worth, meaning value, integrity. I would say that is more integrity is what it takes again to maintain relationships over a long time. Self-worth, that is what is needed to grow from a strong foundation for anything, including wealth, right? So there's this idea essentially that it is how we can tell if we're in coherence or in relationship with something that will last. Right. So that part I'm definitely taking with us. The next quote is, "We heal not by denying the past, but by refusing to let it dictate the future." This I love because she reminds us in this area that the past does not dictate the future. And if we are working from that belief or that fear that something from the past will happen again, then we might be out of sync with what wants to be helping and supporting in this energy, okay? So I don't know if you remember, but last moon, new moon, was innovation energy. It was three. And so what Karen Curry Parker brings up here is the idea that that energy is actually what's going to be made way for in this releasing of the old ideas and getting rid of some things here in the full moon. So when we release these old patterns, we make room for what wants to grow. Or, and I wouldn't say even just grow, but I would say also what will create a stronger foundation. So, innovation implies that we're at the beginning, that we've started something new, and that, in order for it to have the full capacity of growth, then we need to make room, make way. And so, yeah, and so that thing is becoming into its own, but in order for it to do that, we have to get rid of the old stuff that won't. agree with that, or may even cut it off later along the line. So this is why we separate seeds, right? In the garden, we will separate them because we want to give them plenty of space to grow to their full capacity. And so if there's something that's too close, it may shorten or even cut off or make one of the sides of the plant or whatever to be a little bit shorter or a little bit smaller, the leaves, the stems, all that kind of thing, right? So it can cut off the growth of something if we leave too much in the plot. Okay, so the challenge here is it's hard not to go with what you know. The challenge here is basically facing the fear that is the reason why you keep choosing the old patterns or the old people. And again, she's speaking more in patterns here, but we'll see how Richard Rudd makes this more about relationships. And I kind of like that also because we are 40, you know, it's 44.4, not just 44, it's 44.4. And that four is talking about who we are together, right, in the community. So, so there is that. There is that. This is not just about you and me. This is about us, right? And so that is part of kind of the dynamic of what wants to be released. Like what communities, what groups, what friend groups, what even jobs, what careers, what offices do you keep going back to old patterns that you keep complaining about and it's not working and it's keep causing problems, right? So all that is evident in this energy. So ultimately, we are letting this energy help us discern and respond to life with clarity and trust. So it's just not trust in anything, but trust in ourselves for the right choices. So you can see yourself to be able to handle things differently. So this is more my idea than it is Karen Curry Parker's, but this is really about if you've really looked at what has happened then we can really see how we can do something different the next time the problem comes up. So that is what we're looking at is to be able to do it differently and trusting ourselves to choose something different because we've done the work to get over the fear, right? On balance and let's see. Oh, also that we were learning from past bad habits and doing the work. So that's pretty much the same thing I just said. So you know that anytime that you it comes up in the future, you can see how you will make a different choice, even with if you feel the same cringe or fear that has kept you in that pattern in the past. So that is what's available here. So in an unbalanced way, I'm going to give you a quote here that so we can keep an eye out because if we're feeling these things, we might be living more on this perspective of, reacting to fear. So the note here is as fear-driven reactivity, where past wounds distort present truth and lead to self-sabotage or mistrust. So that's the unbalanced expression, is an expression as a fear-driven reactivity. So you're reacting to the past ideas of what you can or cannot trust, and then what you can and cannot do for the self-sabotage part. It may also manifest as avoidance or ignoring or bypassing the past instead of learning from it. So this is also another thing. So people try to kind of there's kind of the fight and flighters, right? So that some people stay and fight for what they think should happen instead of maybe moving on. And then the flyers, the ones, they leave and they keep trying to avoid the situation by going somewhere else or finding another relationship or finding another job. And they take the problem with them, so to speak, by keeping the same energy or viewpoint that keeps them repeating the relationship patterns, right? So again, I'm already kind of bridging into the ideas of the gene keys because I feel like that gives a more balance because we can keep saying patterns of forever. We can keep saying the word trauma forever, but if we don't know what it looks like when we're living it, then that isn't helping, right? So I'm just letting you know that this is what it looks, it'll show up mostly when you're trying to deal with new people, new surroundings, new groups of people. This is when the fear likes to pop up, right? So in the Gene Keys 44.4, we're talking about the shadow of interference, the gift of teamwork, and the city of synarchy. And he named this chapter Karmic Relationships. So right away, we get this idea of relationship. It's the ring of the Illuminati, and it is the shadow description is the human fractals. So again, he's going to who are we as humans together, right? And fractal relationships. Well, let's talk a little bit about interference, which is the shadow. So it's coming from this idea of a karmic relationship being what happens in our genetic patterns, essentially from our DNA, the family groups, our lineages, literally through DNA, and what tends to happen in those relationships and what repeats through those relationships and what are we are attracted to, what we choose, what we are wanting more of, or what we're trying to get away from. All of these patterns, we can consider them fractal. And again, this is how nature happens. This is how things grow. This is how life is created from non-form to form in this 3D reality. So, fractals is a whole concept, but this is applied to our actual who we are in our humanity. So in our family relationships and our group relationships as humans. And so what gets in the so this is what's interesting here is that I think some of what the impression that we're kind of getting from Karen Curry Parker and what I think a lot of people will go with this understanding is that it is the distortion itself that is the problem, right? Like that the fact that we are keep moving outward in the fractal, that we keep having to check on the pattern. And that is what we often mistake instead of being able to recognize the pattern and recognizing who we are within it and how we can make another choice. We often see the pattern as the problem. You hear what I'm saying? This is why, again, just saying trauma is not necessarily helpful. Just saying I have, I'm neurodivergent isn't necessarily helpful when it's time to do something different. Maybe it's sometimes helpful just to see what happened. But I mean, obviously it is helpful just to understand what happened. But when we're trying to do something different and trying to not be getting those circumstances again, we have to start seeing and looking for something different. So the actual frequency is about the interruption of that pattern. It's about what gets in the way of the the continuing branching of relationships and family groups and networks and stable communities and societies and governments. What gets in the way of that? So that is what we're dealing with here. And the reason why the iteration itself, the fractalization of the group of humanity is itself is not bad, is because it's necessary in order for the purpose for why we're here in the first place, is to discern the differences and to understand more fully the whole, which is the process of evolution. Right? So that and how family groups are developed to work out the dysfunction essentially of the whole is on purpose, right? Now, the core of that thing that is driving it in the shadow perspective is distrust, right? And then to me, like the operating concept that is giving us the alternate perspective is love. And we'll see how that kind of fleshes out when you get into the gift. But here, what can cause us to distrust? Well, the fear of what has happened in the past. So you've gone through an experience sometime in your childhood, probably, or something like this, or you fear being hurt again, the pain of being in love or being in a love relationship or loving someone and then them hurting you, the fear of repeating something that has gone wrong when you thought something was going to be a forever. Right. And this starts with the family group. It starts with parents. It starts as a child. And it can just keep evolving from there for every relationship. So let's see how it evolves. Okay. Now, I always like to talk about the programming partner or the opposition if you're a Western astrology girly or guy or Nani, then that side of it is the shadow of addiction. Why do we look at that? Because it's a reflection of what is happening on the other side. It's showing you what is also, hand in hand with allowing this energy to be perpetuated. And on the shadow side, that is addiction. That's 24 addiction. And so what happens here? A lot of times you can really look at this as like people being in relationships with people they should not trust. Like they should not trust. They end up falling in love with people that are hurtful, right? Purposefully hurtful. And you can see here where there's an addiction to the pattern because there's usually some kind of sense that you're going to be good enough or lovable enough to fix that in them, right? So this is that shadow of addiction. It's why people keep going back and they, find or they even leave an old partner and they find somebody else and they're another version of the same thing, right? Because it's basically whatever normally what it's looking like is that you think that you're going to be good enough to not have to deal with it again, but that's not how you get out of that cycle, right? You're already good enough, so that's not the problem either. It's just that you keep looking at yourself as somebody who needs to do better instead of finding the right person that you can be your best self with, right? So there's that. And then the repressive side that looks like being distrustful. It's essentially that either you, and this can come from, again, kind of family lineage of not trusting others, or a conditioned thing that happens from some kind of experience within your life. And again, it starts usually with the childhood experience. And people that have had an experience like that, like I said, will often work or live or find relationships with others that if you're repressing this frequency energy, you're going to maybe still go and try, like keep looking. You're going to keep looking, but you're going to say that you're trying, or you're going to join the group, or you're going to join the job, or you're going to join in a relationship, and then you're going to just keep them kind of at arm's length is what Richard Wright calls it. You can just keep them at a slight distance so that they never can get close enough to hurt you. Um, and the other part of this is defending against experiencing pain in relationships. So sometimes you're actively, in order to continue to repress that possibility of love, in order to not to get hurt, then you're actively like defending your heart or defending yourself by have you ever seen people kind of on guard with their words just to keep people from finding something that's too true about them, right? Or they use even humor. Sometimes they'll use humor to keep people at a distance. It's that kind of thing. Now, on the reactive side, it's misjudging. You keep making the same mistakes. You keep choosing the people that are going to hurt you. This is a quote from Richard Rudd is quote, they tend to ally themselves to those who really don't respect them, who turn against them, or in business, who are a drain on the resources of the business and often just plain incompetent. Okay. Keep choosing people that are not supporting the growth, right? And so evolutionarily, to get out, when I think of that in the context of the Gene Keys, is about how do we get out of this pattern. I find this one a little tricky because he doesn't really actually say it, but I pulled out from the chapter. It's when you overcome a collective pattern of interference. Uh, so basically, the collective pattern is essentially what most people would do. Because, if you look at the general swath of everything that is a tendency and a pattern within the human being, there's a reason to distrust people, right? So in the collective pattern, it would not be surprising if that's your choice. So the evolution, how do we move into the genius? How do we move into the gift frequency? By not falling subject to that. So anything, this is why I hate that certain songs are so popular about cheating. Like, I hate anything related to cheating. I hate anything that's just automatically kind of assuming the worst of somebody and perpetuating the idea that you have every reason to not, because our intuition is always going to tell us, and that's what we're going to learn in the genius and the gift, right? Is that there is something telling you something different. So what are we allowing ourselves to continue to believe that we would need this kind of evidential proof? Now, I think it'd be different if we actually did something like, post. Like, I do think people should have, like, this person has cheated in the last 6 months. I think we should have like public notices that for my single friends out there. I think it wouldn't be too much of a bad thing. But I don't think that we need to tell the story of how humans are horrible over and over and over again in the same exact fashion, right? I mean, I think if you're telling an individual story, at least it's about the personal experience of what is driving and motivating somebody in their individual choice. But just to say that this is a thing that everybody should worry about. I think it's just perpetuating the problem. It's creating this continual seeding and sowing of distrust. So that is the challenge. That is the challenge to move into the gift. Is can you get over that there is true that some people that you cannot trust and stop looking for it. Stop looking for it. Stop looking for it. I'd yell, but my husband would hear me. All right, so it's one of those things. It's something that bothers me so much. It's like, for people who are, most desiring of love and relationships, they only see what isn't working. They only see all the broken relationships. They only see like the worst people. Like, of course you wouldn't date them. Like, of course they're not your type. Of course. And you keep looking and you keep just saying, not, there's nothing for me. There's nothing for me. We have to change what we're looking for, the perspective. Okay. Um, so in the genius, in the gift, there is a sense of teamwork. So that is the frequency of the gift, teamwork. What? Teamwork. Yeah. The quote here is these people are people whose genius is to read other people. So they're finding the people that work well together by discerning what will allow for the growth in the next iteration of the fractal. Yeah. So this is actually in the sense of smell through the immune system. So he was talking about how even like the whole body is a sensory element that allows somebody with this gift to pick up on if something's a little off, that if, there's something fishy about that person. These are the ideas that are coming from this. No, it's not quite right. But the problem, again, I feel like those ones is that they're basically talking to about the negative, and pretty much, once you got a stink in your nose, you can smell it anywhere if you can recall it, right? So it's really about smelling for what will work. I don't know if that makes sense. So, but in order to be able to recognize the right people to align to, that is what's happening in the gift. So you're actually sensing, oh, this smells right. This is good. This is gonna work for me, right? So another quote here is the 44th gift can smell its own higher incarnation and life purpose and those around it, which is why it knows so much about group dynamics. And hubby has this actually in his chart, and so it was one of those things that I can see in him. He might not see in himself, but I see in him where he is so good about knowing what works for a team, what works for a group, and it's actually one of his highest skills that he's been hired for over the years. So I mean, again, I like the stuff because you wouldn't be able to make it up. You wouldn't be able to make it up. It just works, you know? Teamwork is about recognizing who belongs in your life. And let me do this quote, if you were able to assemble your own true factor around you, then the dynamics of this team would be nothing short of awesome. There would be total trust within the group or total love within the family, or both, right? Um, and so that's what's beautiful about here. That's like it's so much about when we are recognizing the right people, how things bloom, blossom naturally, expand into the next level of something. The next incarnation is a word that he used earlier. So there is that piece. And I do want to, in conclusion, talk about the I Ching itself and why I kind of leaning towards Gene Keys in this representation of energy. So we know how to pick up on it. So the 44th hexagram in the I Ching, which we talked about last time too, I want you to think about this because distrust was the element of the last one as well. What was causing chaos is basically the distrust of the unknown, right? The distrust here is planting the seed of bad relationships or relationships that are not in sync or causing pain with one another, right? So within it. So in the 44th hexagram, Richard Rudd describes it as coming to meet from the traditional I Ching. And in my book from Bell, it's called improper meeting. So again, these are, there's 1,000 translations to I Ching. And I mean, a lot more than 1,000. There's a lot of translations of I Ching. But again, why would one choose one? Why would one choose the other? I think we have to look at that even the offness is part of the frequency. In other words, we wouldn't find out what was not working if we didn't see where things shifted into the next evolution, right? So improper meeting is not necessarily a bad thing. Again, the frequency and energy of itself, but it is the truth of what's happening. Something's off, right? And um, and so in the description from Richard Rudd, he talks about how this is essentially why he again calls it coming to meet from the I Ching, is how because they're describing how, when, and why people meet each other. What is happening when we become into a family when we're born? What is happening when we're choosing our relationships as we meet people, as we grow, right? And what are the results from those choices, those happenings of family dynamics, all of those things, right? And so the improper meeting to me is around that is again, like, how do we stack? This is why I feel like there's like sibling rivalries and all these kinds of things because you see so much of the difference and then one in whoever's perception, probably both, one of the other is saying, oh, I have to prove my way of being, who I am within this relationship. And then there's a rivalry, right? Because we can see how much well, not that, usually when you're young, you don't really see how much you're alike, but you see what isn't you and what people like about the other. Maybe not as much what people are understanding and liking about you, or vice versa. Like you're seeing, this is what causes the tension between siblings and in so many dynamics in the household, right? Mother, daughter, father, son, and it goes on, it goes on. There's a lot that happens when we are right up against somebody who is so much like you that you can't stand it. You can't stand it. So that is the case. I think again that something's shifting, that something needs to evolve, that something is must move into its next iteration should not be something to worry about. What we should be looking at is it the right relationship? It is the right group that I'm moving into? Is it the right connection? Right? So, and for me, not maybe for everybody, but for me, always, always, always. We talk about this a lot in the group for vocal alchemy. So I pulled a couple journal questions for you and then we'll wrap up. So the first question is, where do you feel fear that history will repeat itself and how does that fear shape your actions? Again, this level of distrust is coming up. Second time since the new moon in Aries. What are you trying to get away from? Yeah, this is the kind of the culmination of this understanding. If you're trying to get away from something in order by creating something different and causing chaos, or if you're creating something that's from the new moon in Aries, or are you going to allow what you know to inform you to let go of some things and add some things, right? Not building completely from the beginning. Second question, moving on. In what ways have you been reacting to protect yourself rather than responding from your truth? So, another way of asking a similar question. And I remember in this energy, we're like, okay, like, and now I understand. I put that in there because I was trying to not make something happen instead of I put that in there because that's what's next, right? For me and for what's the people that I want to connect with. Okay. This is important, especially if you're building something for your community, for your clients, for your groups, for your families, for everybody, right? It's important to be able to see if you're trying to get away from something, and if that in and of itself, because we're blind to the to that shadow, that we're creating the pattern again instead of just letting it be new, just letting it be new, right? Um, like coming to it fresh, being present, seeing what it is for what it is, and being new with it now, and letting the love guide you into what's next. So that is my I hope that helps out. Don't forget there are links in the description. We got one for the Gene Keys on Gaia. Richard Rudd is awesome on there. I love his series there. And then also for living your myth. So if you're a leader ready for your next era of leadership, living your myth is a great way to see what is it going to take to become the leader that you don't know you are yet. Okay, so if you're interested in that, that's free. The link is in the description, and I hope to see you on that side. And I hope the rest of your day is awesome, or evening, or wherever you are in the world. Ta ta.